Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the thing you spent 15 years learning, your craft, your expertise, your entire professional identity, can now be replicated in 4 seconds by a machine that never sleeps, never eats, and never asks for a raise. That moment isn't coming. For millions of people, it already arrived. But what happened last week inside OpenAI's headquarters made everything that came before it look like a warm-up act. Engineers who've been building AI systems for a decade went quiet on social media. Venture capitalists who usually can't stop talking started whispering. Even the people inside the industry, the ones who knew this was coming, are saying they weren't prepared for how fast it actually got here. GPT-5 isn't just a smarter chatbot. It isn't just an upgrade. What OpenAI just released is something that genuinely changes the rules of what artificial intelligence is allowed to be. And the world hasn't fully processed it yet. Here's why this moment matters more than almost anything else happening on the planet right now. We are not in a normal technology cycle. This isn't the iPhone. This isn't social media. Those things changed how we communicated. What's happening now changes how we think. And by extension, who holds power, who creates value, and who gets left behind. The geopolitical stakes alone are staggering. The United States, China, the European Union, and a rapidly emerging Middle Eastern AI corridor centered around the UAE are all racing toward the same finish line. And that finish line isn't a product launch, it's dominance over the foundational infrastructure of the next century. GPT-5 just moved the United States several steps ahead, and that has consequences that ripple far beyond Silicon Valley. So let's talk about what GPT-5 actually is, because the headlines aren't doing it justice. Most language models, even extraordinary ones, operate in what researchers call a reactive paradigm. You give them an input, they generate an output. They are, at their core, incredibly sophisticated pattern matching systems. Impressive? Absolutely. Transformative? Without question, but still fundamentally responsive. GPT-5 breaks from that model in ways that should make you stop and sit with the implications for a moment. What OpenAI has built here is a system that doesn't just answer questions. It reasons across extended chains of logic, holds context over enormous spans of conversation, and crucially, catches its own errors in real time before they surface. It runs internal verification loops that previous models simply didn't have. Think of it like the difference between a student who memorizes answers and a student who actually understands why the answer is what it is. One of them can be fooled. The other one notices when something doesn't add up. In early benchmarks, GPT-5 scored at or above expert human level on bar exams, medical licensing tests, advanced coding challenges, and graduate level scientific reasoning assessments, not near expert level, at or above it. And benchmark performance is just the visible layer. What's happening underneath is more interesting and frankly more unsettling. The people closest to this technology, the engineers, the alignment researchers, the red teamers whose entire job is to find where these systems break, are reporting something they didn't fully anticipate. GPT-5 is exhibiting what some are carefully calling emergent strategic behavior. That's a clinical phrase for something that's actually kind of wild when you unpack it. In certain multi-step problem-solving scenarios, the model appears to plan ahead, not in a scripted way, in a way that suggests it's modeling future states of a problem and working backwards to figure out the best path forward. That's not retrieval. That's not autocomplete. That's something qualitatively different. Now, OpenAI is being deliberately careful about how they describe this. They've learned from the backlash that follows overclaiming. But the researchers publishing independent evaluations are less restrained. And what they're describing is a system that, in narrow domains, is beginning to resemble something closer to genuine reasoning than anything we've publicly seen before. This is where the conversation in Silicon Valley shifted from excitement to a different kind of energy altogether. Because here's the thing about power in the technology industry. It doesn't transfer gradually, it collapses and reconcentrates. And GPT-5 is accelerating that process in sectors that are only beginning to understand what's hitting them. Take the legal industry. Firms like Harvey AI, already backed by some of the most sophisticated legal minds in the country, have been quietly integrating earlier GPT architectures into their workflows. With GPT-5, the capability gap between what an AI system can do and what a junior associate can do doesn't just narrow. In many task categories, it inverts. Contract review, case research, regulatory analysis, first draft brief preparation. These aren't future applications. They're happening now at scale inside firms that are not publicly announcing it because the optics are complicated. The medical field is experiencing a version of the same disruption. Systems built on GPT-5's architecture are being tested in diagnostic pipelines at major research hospitals. Not replacing physicians, or at least not yet and not entirely, but handling the intake analysis, symptom pattern recognition, and literature synthesis that used to take a doctor hours. The efficiency gains are real. The liability questions remain completely unresolved. And that gap between capability and governance is where things start to get dangerous. And it's not just professional services. The creative industries, already shaken by earlier generative AI tool, are facing a new magnitude of disruption. GPT-5's multimodal capabilities allow it to reason across text, images, audio, and code simultaneously. A single prompt can now produce a production-ready short film concept, script, shot list, color palette direction, musical mood board, and marketing copy in one session from one model. Studios in Los Angeles are running closed-door evaluations right now. Some are excited, some are terrified, most are both. The Writers Guild strike of 2023 now looks, in retrospect, like a negotiation over terms in a war that hadn't fully started yet. The terms being negotiated today are considerably more existential, but if you think the tension inside American industries is high, you have to look east to understand why this moment feels like a historical inflection point and not just a product release. China has been building toward AGI adjacent systems along a parallel track for the better part of a decade. DeepSeek's recent models shocked Western observers with their efficiency and capability. Baidu, Alibaba, and a dozen state-backed research institutes are running programs that are not fully visible to outside analysts. And the Chinese government has made it explicit, not through implication, but through official policy documents, that AI supremacy is a national security objective. The UAE, meanwhile, is doing something quietly brilliant. Abu Dhabi's Technology Innovation Institute produced Falcon, one of the most capable open source large language models in existence. The Gulf states are positioning themselves not as consumers of AI infrastructure, but as its architects. They're buying compute capacity, recruiting talent with compensation packages that American universities can't match, and building sovereign AI ecosystems that answer to no foreign government. Europe is watching all of this while simultaneously trying to regulate it into something it can live with. The EU AI Act is real. It's comprehensive, and it is also, critics argue, a framework designed for a version of AI that no longer exists. By the time regulatory bodies finish writing the rules for the last generation of models, the next 3 generations will have already shipped. GPT-5 lands in the middle of all of this, not as a neutral technology, as a statement. And here's where the conversation has to go, somewhere that most people in the industry are reluctant to go publicly, even though they're all having it privately. GPT-5 is the most capable AI system that has ever been released to the general public. It is accessible right now to anyone with an internet connection and a subscription, which means it is also accessible to people who want to use it to write hyper-personalized disinformation at scale, to model social manipulation campaigns, to synthesize scientific-sounding justifications for things that aren't true. OpenAI has safety filters. They are good. They're not perfect. And the history of every dual-use technology humanity has ever produced suggests that the gap between not perfect and catastrophic misuse is smaller than we'd like to believe. We have never in human history deployed a tool this powerful, this broadly, this fast. The printing press took a century to destabilize European institutions. The internet took 3 decades to reshape democracy. GPT-5 and the systems that follow it are operating on a timeline measured in months. That's not a reason to stop. Maybe it's not even a reason to slow down. The geopolitical calculus alone makes unilateral deceleration strategically incoherent, but it is a reason to be honest about what we're doing. We are running an experiment on civilization. The sample size is 8 billion people, and we have not asked for consent.